How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here and welcome back to World of Tanks console, and today we are talking about one of the biggest things that I think has come out of Wargaming's update news in a while in terms of gameplay, and that is that they are looking into crew skills, equipment, and generally things that affect the actual in-game stuff. And so without further ado, let's jump into some of the things that I think do need to be addressed, some of the things that you guys have mentioned as well, and I'm interested to see what your comments are as well. If you play World of Tanks console or not, you've left and you've had some disagreements with what they've been doing, etc. It'd be interesting to see why you've left and whether anything could remediate it, whether that's gameplay wise or just direction wise with the company themselves. But for me, in terms of gameplay, what I would actually like to see, what I think would make the game better and for all intents and purposes make the player base more knowledgeable and actually introduce a change to the meta shift that we currently have. Meta being as in what everyone typically uses. If they're like a competitive player, they're trying to play the most competitive games. And that is that the biggest issue is probably the aiming, and that generally auto aim is just ridiculously good. Now, I've spoken to a few people about this, and it's in general agreement that being able to snapshot people halfway across the map whilst on the move, with laser-like accuracy in medium tanks, with very good accuracy in heavy tanks, and with really good accuracy in tank destroyers, is probably not particularly too helpful to introducing, good plays into the game, and often it actually leads to the whole YOLO meta being used even more so than it previously was. And this is certainly something that leads to those shorter games that you probably see within the game, and whilst you might not understand that it is somewhat down to the fact that auto aim is so good and accuracy is so good in the game, and whilst I do like that accuracy is improved, the way in which Wargaming have implemented it is that accuracy in general, like global accuracy, whether you're auto aiming, whether you're fully aiming, has been super buffed by all of the equipment and crew skills. Now, previously, before update 6.0, which was one of the biggest updates for World of Tanks console, and it was a terrible update. It was supposed to be the revolutionary update that is going to change World of Tanks console into something bigger and better, but it probably had the negative impact and ended up going the other way. But what happened is that accuracy was significantly worse because the crew skills were significantly worse, or they didn't give you as bigger bonuses as you currently see within the game. And so now what we have is things giving you 10% increased accuracy. You're seeing things giving you 10% increased accuracy whilst on the move, 10% increased accuracy during turret rotation, and all of these things are leading to essentially being able to auto aim on the move, which is a perk, by the way. Run and gun gives you increased accuracy when on the move, combined with I don't know the specific skill. Is it essentially it is there's steady aim, which is just general accuracy buff of 10%, but then you have the turret rotation one. I can't remember what they've changed it to, whether or not it's still snapshot or not, but essentially when you're moving the turret, which when you're on the move, your turret, when you're auto aimed, will actually move because of the fact that the enemy tank is probably moving, and so you get another 10% increase to accuracy, which is why you're seeing heavy tanks being able to roll around with huge caliber weapons even when they're moving, because they don't move that fast, so the bloom, the reticle of the actual tank doesn't go as big, and therefore your accuracy is better because they're slower, and so you're getting really decent accuracy with heavy tanks, and even better accuracy with mediums, and traveling at faster speeds in medium tanks in general. Obviously there's some caveats, sometimes you find a heavy tank that's faster than a medium. I'm not saying blanketed all over the board, but generally medium tanks have been seen to be like the current top tier meta, because armor as it currently stands doesn't really mean a whole lot. It often doesn't really work because of the fact that premium round inflation has definitely happened with new premium vehicles being added with higher penetration premium rounds, on tier 8 vehicles that can auto pen tier 10s in the front, and with the improved accuracy, anyone that actually aims in the game, which is actually quite low apparently, is that, yeah, you're basically seeing people rolling around auto penning everything with high penetration premium rounds and with crazy accuracy on the move. Now, one suggestion from me would be to nerf the accuracy during movement and when snapshotting, just in general, by like 50%. Make it literally diabolically bad so that only as a light tank player, when you do actually need auto aim and it becomes beneficial, when you should use it, because predominantly that's what auto aim was for, when you go round the broadside of a mouse in something like not an EBR, but something like an AMX 13105, for example, or a Manticore, or some fast light tank where you are trying to kind of ambush someone towards the late or the mid to late game, and that is kind of where you can use auto aim. That is what it was predominantly used for prior to update 6.0, whereas now you can essentially use it to automatically lock onto people. And I already know there's someone commenting in the description or the comments down below saying that, oh no, you just use it to actually aim at someone. You use it to lock on and then you aim. Yes, this is something that, you know, if you have any experience of World of Tanks, will generally improve the amount of successful penetrations you're going to have. But it's the fact that even with absolutely nothing to your name, you know, you're very new to the game, you throw your friend who's never played the game whatsoever into a tier 10 and say, just press RB and RT at everyone. You load the premium rounds by pressing the premium round button, whatever that is on your consoles, or if you play on keyboard and mouse, you're crazy, but you know, it is what it is. Either way, if you do that, it is probably more than likely that it's probably more likely that the round will actually hit the tank than it won't hit the tank. And that is something that is definitely an issue, because even if it pens you, it's still frustrating because of the fact that you, as a person that can also be auto-aimed, say someone is coming, you know, over a hill, they're doing 50 kilometers an hour, they're not looking at you, and they press RB, and suddenly their turret swings towards you, they fire, and it hits you across the map over a hill, and it's like, I actually aimed my shot, I tried to hit them, you know, and they managed to just RB RT me, and for some reason I do no damage because they're moving at like 60 kilometers an hour over a hill, and it's a bit of a tricky shot to lead when someone goes over a hill at 60, and you know, maybe they're doing some weird turns or something like that, but they can hit you maybe because you're stationary at one point in the game, and so it just feels like it is not suited to actually being rewarding players who play well. And obviously if you don't reward players who play well, then, you know, and it's not the person's fault who's auto-aiming. Now, it is something that you have to do because it is just so good and better than if you were to aim. But the whole point being is that you shouldn't have to do that in a game which is supposedly trying to, you know, be competitive or have some level of like skill gap. Lowering that skill gap even further is something that is frustrating, and I think this sort of thing is more of a frustration mechanic than it is like a rewarding mechanic. Like, I'm not literally being like going crazy over hitting a shot, you know, at someone when I'm driving over a hill, auto-aiming them, you know, it's not rewarding playstyle, whereas previously you did actually have to aim if you wanted a good chance at penning. Yes, occasionally they would happen, at which point you would get excited because you're like, oh my god, that should never have hit, it was ridiculous that it hit. Now it's like, oh yeah, just another pen going over a hill at 60 kilometers an hour in my medium tank against a heavy tank from the front. Yeah, this sort of stuff definitely needs to happen, and it's why medium tanks have generally been much more used. I think in terms of competitive play, from what I can tell, like the tanks that you can do well in are typically mediums with a little bit of armor on the turret and decent DPM. That is pretty much the meta at the moment. Playing heavy tanks can work, you know, if you come up against people that just auto aim continuously. and you angle and you're not playing something like a Type 5 Heavy, which can just be auto-penned by anything at tier 10, running premium rounds straight through the front of it. Obviously, there are tier 10s that don't have the flat penetration to go through the front of a Type 5. I know someone's probably going to be saying, well, actually, there is a tank that can't pen the Type 5 from the front. What I mean is that because of the high penetration that they've been releasing recently, buffing everything's penetration from tier 8 upwards to crazy levels, it basically means armor isn't really useful. And when you're playing in a heavy tank, the whole point of it is that it's supposed to have some level of armor, and whilst in very specific niche scenarios that is the case, most of the time there is not really a whole difference when it comes to the hull of the tank. As well as, you know, the turrets of things have got significantly worse since all of the accuracy changes, and because the accuracy changes are much better, it's now much harder to be able to actually bounce shots in a heavy tank, which has made people prefer mediums, because you essentially bounce roughly the same amount of shots, obviously, not necessarily, but it's somewhat comparable. Like, you can bounce a comparable amount of damage in a medium compared to a heavy tank, because heavies don't really block that much damage anymore because of the reasons I've just said. And so the meta is just fast medium, super high DPS, or like DPM, so the highest DPM that you can possibly find on a tank that doesn't have an autoloader, and just run that stuff. And essentially just lock down people's tracks, auto aim over hills whenever you possibly can at people halfway across the map. And this is also accentuated by the fact that high alpha TDs also get all of these accuracy improvements, which means things like, for example, the spam of high alpha premium vehicles and tier 10 vehicles, for example, things like the Roofless, the FV4005, the FV215B183, the Jaegeru. What else have we got? We have got all of the high alpha heavies that we've been seeing added into the game. We have the Turan, we have the E4, the E3, all of these high alpha TD tanks. And there's been a ton more that I've probably missed out, but those are just some off the top of my head. All of these also get the accuracy improvements, whereas before, to the point where like you're not really missing if you're fully aiming. Like, you don't really miss that often when you do actually fully aim, even in a tank that has bad accuracy in quotation marks, compared to like a medium, for example. Which is the benefit of playing a medium. It has better accuracy supposedly, but the accuracy is so good between all of the tank classes that even a bad accuracy tank can become really accurate, and it kind of makes it pointless playing anything in between. And that's why, you know, back in the day, you used to have FV4005s, and hitting a shot was actually difficult. Like, it wasn't a guarantee that you're going to hit where you aim, or at least within a minuscule portion of where you aim. I'm not talking about any server lag issues, which definitely occur, and the server issues on World of Tanks console are prevalent, which is why if you know, in the aiming reticle and you move over very quickly and you fire, the shell goes out sideways from your tank. That is the server. That is not the way accuracy actually works in the game. So just for those of you wondering, there is a server issue in the game, which means if you do turn your turret too quick, the server doesn't catch up, and when you press the fire button, it says that you're hovered over a vehicle, but your tank round actually goes off at like a diagonal angle from where you're aiming, and it's outside of the reticle. It is not a ghost shell, it's not a weird thing happening, it is simply the servers on the game just cannot handle, you know, what you're actually doing in the game. And I think that is definitely something Wargaming need to work on if they want this game to become, you know, better. You know, the gameplay aspect, that's why we all play. I don't play for menu content. I don't play for PvE, which seems to be a focus of what they're doing at the moment. It is not why I play World of Tanks. I do not play to play against bots. I do not want to see bots in the game and that sort of stuff. It is just not fun. I want to play against real humans. I want to try and be as competitive as possible, or simply just have fun pushing around other players with a mouse, for example. I'm talking about enemy players, by the way. But yes, that is why accuracy, I think in my opinion, needs to be nerfed significantly on all of the perks, or simply just remove the ability for accuracy to impact the auto aim, and for the actual perks and equipment to have varying levels of accuracy buffs to the actual tank types that we have in the game. For example, mediums get 10% increase to accuracy, heavy tanks get 5%, or maybe do it in the reverse. Heavy tanks get 10%, mediums get 5%, tank destroyers get 6%, you know, artillery don't get anything, and that sort of thing. So you get my drift. Light tanks get the max because I think that is actually what it's supposed to be used for with regards to run and gun. And so, yeah, that is something I think should be in the game. We see it with equipment, where equipment is only available for certain vehicles or certain vehicle types. And so why not implement that into the perk and crew skill system, where you get varying ranges of equipment and crew skills that work differently depending on what tank class you're playing. This would actually improve the build diversity and the equipment diversity that you actually take on tanks, because to all intents and purposes, I run the same 4 pieces of equipment in my vehicles, every single one pretty much. And that is based on coated optics, rammer, maybe ventilation, so this is why I'm saying 4. I take 3, but there are 4 pieces of equipment I pretty much use. Gun stabilizer, and then also coated optics. I think I said that already, but essentially it's rammer, coated optics, and then V-stabs, or something like rammer, coated optics, camo net if I'm playing like a stealthy tank. It's basically just rammer, coated optics. Those are 2 that I have on every tank, and then the third one is like dependent somewhat on the class of tank I'm playing. Like if I'm playing a sneaky TD, I take a camo net over something like vents, or if I want to make it really stealthy, I would play camo net, vents, and then coated optics and drop the gun rammer. But pretty much it's all the same sort of equipment between like 4, and what we have like 10 or 15 different pieces of equipment in the game, and I can probably guess that only about 5 of them get used on average, probably like 90% of equipment, like as in what gets used. Like 5 pieces of equipment are used by 90% of the people, and like, you know, barely anyone uses any of the rest of the like 10 perks or equipment within the game. So I think that that is something that needs to be addressed, opening up the build diversity, adding in some new equipment as well. This is something that I've been waiting for the longest time, adding in some more nuanced pieces of equipment that certain tanks can take advantage of, because, you know, it would be cool to run a T95 that has, you know, maybe some... You know, it's cool because I ran the T95 with track mechanic and stuff like that, which was really interesting, and it felt fun. You know, I can experiment, my tank is my own, whereas like 90% of the time I'm just running the exact same pieces of equipment in every tank, because it's just the best way to play, it's the most effective, and if you run anything else you're at a significant disadvantage. I think adding in this option would definitely help out with that. So, what else is there? What would I change about the crew system in general? Do I think you should be able to take more skills? I think that if you were to add an additional... maybe we should talk about equipment. Maybe that's a better way of doing it. Maybe if they were to add another slot for equipment, I think that would be interesting, whereby you could experiment with another piece of equipment. You know, it allows you to actually add in another piece of equipment that is maybe more specific to your tank, that really does help you out in certain situations, but having only essentially, because you can take 4 right now, but you don't ever really want to take off the enhanced targeting info because of the fact that it gives you an outline, and if anyone goes behind a bush you cannot see them. Like, yes, they're there, but you don't know exactly where you're hitting them. You can't track and damage them realistically if they go behind a cover and stuff like this. It makes it very, very difficult to reliably, you know, have those consistent games. And whilst, yes, you may have one really good game, I don't think it's a competitive way of playing. I think if they were to do it, just remove the enhanced targeting info and just give that to everyone as standard, and then just have 4 slots for you to be able to use, and then nerf things like the coated optics so that they give you values based on the tank class that you're using, because having 10% on every class in the games means that heavies can basically spot everything in the game that fires at them within their view range. This is not something how it should actually work. What's the point in having view range if pretty much only like a couple of tanks can fire in a bush and not get spotted? It's why spotting is just basically redundant at this point, because everyone's spotting for themselves. It makes light tanks significantly worse, and I think the worst class out of all of them right now is probably light tanks, because everyone has better accuracy to hit you, which is the whole point. You try and avoid the damage, and so yeah, it leads to a lot of light tank players basically just going after the artillery because it's the highest damage they're probably going to get in the game, because light tanks are predominantly harder to play, but it's made even more kind of punishing, I think, for a lot of players who do play light tanks at the moment. And with the accuracy buffs to everyone else, they're easily able to hit you. You have lower hit points. Everyone is faster because of the speed boost equipment. You see basically everyone can pen you. Like, you know, it's just basically a whole lot of negatives. You can get outspotted by medium tanks if they're running a full camo setup. And they're in a bush with another bush or something like that. You know, it basically makes it very difficult to use a light tank in the true scouting fashion, so you might as well play a medium tank to fulfill that role if you really want to, and focus on equipment that's going to allow you to do that. So camo net and optics is going to allow you to get more spotting and probably be comparable to a light tank. You won't be as good because you won't have the concealment bonuses, but you can make it work with silent driving to reduce the effect of moving on your camo factor significantly. And so yeah, it just basically makes light tanks pointless to all intents and purposes. Like, yeah, it's just not a great feature, and yeah, I think that they definitely need some love. The fact that they nerfed the Manticore, by the way, like, I was actually pissing myself with laughter. How they decided that nerfing the Manticore was the issue. Yeah, why on earth they managed to do that? That tank was pretty garbage as it was previously, and then nerfing it now, like, oh my god. It just shows you what, like, I don't know who made the decision on that. I don't care, but it was a bad decision in my eyes as a player of the game to nerf the Manticore. It did not need a nerf. In any case, it needed a DPM buff to try and compete with the mediums that it's facing, because they have like double the DPM of it. So, you know, either way, those are some of the things that I want to see Wargaming focus on from my perspective. I've played the game for like over 10 years now. I've played through all of the different eras, and whilst I do like accuracy being good, I think there are ways of doing that without making it just RBRT meta, running the exact same piece of equipment. I want to see build diversity with regards to what you actually put on your tank, making things better. You know, some of those weird ones that no one ever uses, like reinforced ammo rack, like does anyone actually use that? It's basically only usable in something like an FV215B, the tinderbox as I like to call it. It's the British heavy tank at tier 10, which basically has an engine in the front of the tank, and if you get hit there, it's just not fun. But even that can be mitigated by just running an automatic fire extinguisher, so you know, it's not really that interesting anyway. So I'd rather just use something that is going to work all of the time and take the fact that I probably am going to get set on fire at some point. So yeah, it's just really annoying. I think the overall just buffs to everything, and yeah, you guys have probably seen it in your games. You probably feel it, and whilst you might not be able to put your finger on it, it's probably all down to those sorts of things. And yeah, I think when you try and niche everyone into like one class, which is basically mediums being so much better than everything else right now, and high alpha TDs just dominating, that's why you don't see low alpha TDs typically as much anymore in your games. You're seeing lots of high alpha TDs, like we're talking 850 damage plus in all of your games, you know, Tyrans, Jaegers, FV4005s, etc., which is negatively impacting the game. Like, these tanks should not be able to hit with the accuracy that they do have. It's crazy how accurate they are, and the whole point about them was to make them, like, you know, derpy. And the fact I can run a KV2 in 2025 rolling at full speed and hit exactly where I want to across the map is ludicrous. If you managed to do that back in the day, you would have absolutely cried with laughter, and it made it fun. You do all of this sort of stuff, you make everything too good, you make it trying to make it for everyone in the game, and it becomes for no one, and no one gets as much fun. Because even the players I played with, these are players back in the day, we all had a ton of fun. They were not necessarily the most skilled players, as you would put it, you know, they didn't have the highest win rate or anything like that, but it was still insanely fun. And I think that that is what happens when you make everything too good and try and mediate everything. You try and balance everything so that every tank can do everything, and it means that no tank is special and nothing is rewarding when you actually manage to do anything. So yeah, that is kind of my little overview, some of the things I wanted to talk about, considering Wargaming mentioned that they're going to take a look at equipment and crew skills in their latest update news for World of Tanks console. Hopefully you get my opinions. I'm not saying I'm right, as always. I'm not telling Wargaming, I'm not telling you exactly what they should do. I don't have the answer as a singular individual, but I know as a player this is what I would do if I owned the company and I wanted to make a better gameplay variant for me. So that is something that I think would be interesting to open up the floor to you guys, and I'm interested to see your comments in the comment section down below. But without further ado, I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the week if I don't catch you again, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.